Hello, my friend. I wanted to talk a bit about the importance of being at one with yourself and acting in accordance with who you are, who you want to be, how you feel about things, what you believe, and what you value. And it is very important to start noticing when you are out of sync with yourself, when you are no longer acting in good faith in your own beliefs, in your own principles, in who you are, and you're getting that horrible feeling of cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is not just cognitive dissonance, it's also emotional dissonance, and it's also kind of relational dissonance and spiritual dissonance. It's the whole idea of being dissonant with what is around you and what you are doing in your life that is so incredibly destructive. So the idea of cognitive dissonance has been written about for many, many decades. The term was first coined by Leon Festinger, one of the Gestalt psychologists who worked with a man called Kurt Lewin, who is behind a lot of the psychological knowledge that we still kind of have as the foundation of what we know about human beings and groups, and how people sometimes adjust their perceptions because authorities tell them that something is so, even though in their bones they know that can't be right. Or people going along with the other people around them in a group because there are so many people telling you something is a particular color or a particular way, that even though you know it isn't so or it doesn't seem like that to you, you will go along with it. But the effect of it is that you will become uncomfortable. You will have a feeling of being out of sorts with yourself. So, for instance, if somebody is trying to tell you that so you go into a market or say a festival, and there is a stand where somebody is selling you little bottles that look very attractive, and they say to you, these bottles will cure any problems you've got. So if you have headaches, or if you have stomach ache, or if you have any other problems, take 2 drops in the morning, 2 drops at noon, and 2 drops in the evening, and you're going to be right as rain, they say. Now, you have this awful feeling that this can't be right. But people around you say, oh yeah, that's really good stuff, you should give it a go, you know. And so you buy it for an exorbitant amount, which makes you even more aware that this can't be right. And then you go home and you take it for a week and nothing changes. And you come to realize that what you were sold was snake oil. Now, this is a very simple situation, because after a week you get back in line with yourself and you say, okay, I was right after all. I was a fool to buy this stuff and to believe in it, but now experience has shown me that I was wrong. You leave it behind. Story about the snake oil is over. You go back to checking your facts and not be gullible and not just take something on faith and not just put medication into you that has no proven value. But situations are rarely as simple as that. For many, many years, people used to smoke because everyone else around them smoked and said it was cool. And so even if a person felt that it was wrong because it seemed, to make you cough, and it seemed like a dirty habit, and people smelled like ashtrays when they did it. But you didn't have the facts, in the 50s, 60s, you didn't have the facts. You had to act on your own values, on the idea that if something seemed harmful to you, even though other people thought it was cool, that you still needed to allow yourself to stay with that feeling and figure out why you were feeling that way, and then kind of have peace with not being cool. And that's much harder, because if there is this sort of confirmation bias around you where everybody wants to go along with something that is fashionable or that is apparently attractive, it is very hard to stand up for what you feel or know to be right, even though everybody tries to make it out that you're wrong. And it gets much more complicated when it comes to behaviors that don't just affect you, but that affect other people as well. So if you are in a group of people, especially as a teenager, this will quite often happen, and say a group of your friends around you will start to treat somebody badly because they don't fit in to the wider group. Perhaps they are a bit different because they look a little bit different, they have different color eyes, or they wear a different type of clothes than have become kind of routine for that particular group. It may also be because they have different kind of interests to the rest of the group. Instead of being interested in football or pop music or fashion and stuff like that, they're interested in bird watching or something else that is atypical. Now, that group may want to impose a kind of bullying behavior to people like that, because the process of conformity will often make that happen. If somebody stands outside of the group, of the norm of the group, and is in the margin, sometimes groups will tolerate a few marginal people. But if that margin gets pushed too far and the person is too different, then the group in the middle will tend to start bullying that person in order to try and get them to conform and come back into the fold. But if you're part of that group and you're observing that, and you realize that what is happening here is a kind of a form of totalitarianism where everybody has to be the same and has to obey a particular routine, and this starts to grate on you because you begin to realize that if the group is willing to treat this outlier in this aggressive way, that same group might treat you in that way if you start to want to do things that don't fit with the group pattern. Then you might wake up to the uncomfortable feeling of cognitive dissonance and the realization that what the group that you so comfortably belong to, what that group is proposing to do, is not something that fits with your values or seems right to you. So at that point, you might deal with your cognitive dissonance at first by rationalizing that the group is right, by pretending to yourself that the group is right and that you are wrong, in fact. Or you might use other mechanisms. You might try to persuade the group to be a little kinder and to ease the situation, but find you're not successful at it, and then give in to force majeure and kind of assume that they are right and you are wrong. So you're doing violence to yourself. What you can do in those situations, when you feel this discomfort and you know that really something is happening here that is not a good model for how human beings should act with each other, then you can educate yourself. You can find out where there are groups of people who think like you feel deep down, and therefore find true justification for your different beliefs. You can find out, for instance, that groups who behave like that can turn into oppressive groups that harm other people. And so you might come to actually realize that your instinct of wanting to be kind to people in the margins was a good and sound instinct. And that it is sometimes important to listen to your cognitive dissonance and to not suppress it, and to not be willing to live with the discomfort of acting and believing in different ways, but wanting to be at one with yourself again. Then learn to figure out what it is that you believe, why you believe it, and find out, because many people will have thought about these things before and will have written about these things before. So educate yourself and find out how you might dare to stand up to the negative behavior in the group. This is actually one of the most maturational experiences that you can have as a teenager and a young adult. It's not about rebelling, but it is about standing up for what is right, even when others are trying to prove you wrong. You can only do this by A, listening to yourself, B, figuring out what the gap is, why it's painful, what the distortions are, and what the lies are that you are being told. That it is snake oil, that it is okay to be nasty to other people because they're different. Those things you will discover do not make for a good life, and believing in those things or acting on those things and get out of touch with your own sense of right and wrong is never a good thing in life. So this is how you learn to check on the facts and to distinguish between what is being imposed on you and what is possible, and to dare to examine things rather than take them on faith, and to learn to find your own way, which is in tune both with truth, factual reality, and also with your own inner sense of decency and integrity. So trust your cognitive dissonance and figure out why you feel it, and then dare to act on what seems of value to you as you are learning to stand your ground, my friend. All the best in that process. It's one of the hardest things to learn to do without just going into opposition and rebellion. Be very calm about it. Examine it carefully. Take your time and do it with confidence. The confidence of being in the process of seeking truth rather than with going for the path of least resistance, which is usually not a good path. Take care, my friend. Be strong and allow yourself to learn. You can't know it all ahead of time. There is no shame in changing your mind as you figure out how things truly stand in life.